Happy to be joined now in the Goodyear Hotline by Abby Greensfelder, the founder and CEO of Every Woman Studios, which is putting out a film I can't wait to see, LFG. If you don't know what that stands for, you should be watching a whole lot more U.S. Women's National Team soccer and NWSL and just soccer in general, because LFG is the rallying cry of our great female athletes from that team, and also the name of the film, set to talk about the quest for equal pay and everything else relating to some of the most popular and beloved women athletes in our country. Abby, thanks so much for the time. I'm so excited for this movie. When you look at this ongoing fight for equal pay, how do you decide how to approach that in the film as it's not yet resolved?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And first off, thanks so much for having me on the show. And Sarah, love all you've done, particularly talking about sort of women's stories in sports. So kudos to you. And Jason, you're also awesome. So I think this is a great story. You know, it's a cultural touchstone for us as women now. And really the story sort of mirrors a story that as women we all can relate to, which is the issue of being paid equally. But in thinking about how to tell this story, when the women on International Women's Day in 2019, when they announced their lawsuit on International Women's Day, and I read the story, and I had talked to someone close to the team, I thought to myself, this is a story that needs to be told, right? Because here you have women all banding together as a group to do something that they feel like is right, but takes enormous bravery and courage, and is really hard to do, which is to sue your employer who you've spent your whole career preparing and wanting to work for.
Right.
And so to try and tell that story required figuring out a way to do it right, and the way that we felt we would do the story most justice is to really tell it in the voices of the women themselves. So we very much wanted to get members of the team, both current and past, to take us inside this fight, which, as you all may know, has been going on for many, many years in terms of trying to get equality and parity between the U.S. women's soccer team and the U.S. men's soccer team, and frankly, just for women in sports in general. So I partnered with filmmakers at Fine Films, and we together, alongside Propagate Content, our other partner, felt that, we really wanted to tell this through a very personal lens versus doing kind of a history of the U.S. team or so in that sense, it's a very personal film, and it's a very intimate film, and follows these sort of verite moments with them through this fight, which I think makes it feel very personal and relatable.
Yeah. For sure.
And with that being said, Abby, like when you're looking at the fight, and you're right, it's been going on for a very long time. Where's the wall? Like, where's the resistance in the fight to just accomplish equality when it comes to pay?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that it's a very complex issue, and making this film and trying to understand the different pay structures and the way that the economics work is very complex. But basically, when you get down to it, you have a situation where, you have FIFA on the one hand, whose the purse for winning the World Cup is not equal, right, between what women's teams get and men's teams get. But that's not the focus of the lawsuit. The lawsuit is really, as it relates to U.S. soccer, who employs both the men and the women's teams, how is the pay there divided? And really, it goes down to both the question of, are the women paid the same, and is the rate of pay the same? And effectively, no, it hasn't been. So the women have had to win more games and ostensibly compete better in order to get paid the same or more than men. In fact, they actually got paid more over the period of time that this lawsuit was investigated. And that was because they were so successful. They won all their friendlies. They won a bunch of World Cups. They won everything. So I think the very relatable metaphor here for kind of every woman anywhere, or anyone who's not paid the same as a counterpart because of an issue that's not related to your skill. Because I think we could all see objectively that these women are the best at what they do in the world. Like, undisputably, their record is unrivaled. But they, for the same job, they have had to work or achieve, 5X or 7X to make the same amount. And that's not what equal looks like. So it's about, the goal here is to recalibrate, their goal is to recalibrate that. And on this journey, what we learn is how hard it is to achieve that, because the question of the walls, there are a lot of walls, there is.
Well, and Abby, they're fighting their own federation. Like your point, they're fighting their own employer, who they also need in order to continue competing. It's a monopoly in the sense that they can't go play elsewhere for the same thing. And again, to remind people, and we're talking to Abby Greensfelder, the founder and CEO of Every Woman Studios, and her upcoming film LFG about the U.S. Women's National Team and their equal pay fight. A reminder that this is very different than, say, the WNBA, because this is a nonprofit federation whose stated goal is to grow the game for boys and girls, women and men. So the inequalities in funding for the men's and girls and boys and women's programs is intrinsic to what they're supposed to be doing, is inequality of the support. And that's why this fight is so frustrating for many. And of course, because of the success they've had. Abby, I'm curious because, Every Woman Studios is about telling female focused stories. And I wonder, in your time in the industry where you've done other, iconic things like Say Yes to the Dress, which, by the way, I watched like every day before my wedding. What was a final moment or incident that made you think, we need Every Woman Studios? I want to, address the gender gap and actually create something that answers to it.
Yeah. And I'm glad you watched Say Yes to the Dress. I've learned more about A-lines and
oh my gosh, yeah,
mermaid cuts and all these things over the years. I think that I came up through the media business at a time of enormous organic growth, and I actually have been both a network executive and a production executive. One of the things that I've seen, especially in the unscripted business, which is sort of real stories, documentaries, unscripted, is that, when I was at Discovery, there are these certain spaces, outdoor science, natural history, exploration, that all, for whatever reason, just have men in them. And the thinking went, because these channels were male skewing, like ESPN had a male skewing audience, that therefore that audience would not tolerate women in those content spaces. And so this is something I felt keenly, both as someone who was programming these channels for years, and then as a producer was developing shows. And, I would do my best as a producer to have different kinds of people in these spaces, but often, it's the same, we see the same kind of people over and over again. So I very much felt that in order to kind of switch out that cycle, of only men will watch male skewing programs and only women will watch female skewing programs. Well, why couldn't we just have women in these stories that's appealing to everyone in the same way that, women will watch men, and right, it's all about entertaining content. So really that was the impetus for Every Woman, was to find a way to put women in the story, but make it appeal to everyone. But to do that in a way like a story like LFG, I do think that this is a story that will appeal to all audience, male, female, old and young, because of the swagger of these characters, because of their personalities, because of their bravery of the fight, and it's a dramatic story.
Yeah.
It just so happens that these are women that are the central characters in the story, and by the way, they are not all the same. And that's part of what our mission is at Every Woman Studios, is to put gradation around characters and give some shade to the differences, that we're not all the same. So that was really the impetus, was just seeing that there were these gaps and wanting to do something about it.
I love it. And yeah, I think these women are a perfect subject for that. As I like to say, they were not just aspirational to me, but eventually became instructional. And it was, I don't want to just dream of being you, but I want to follow your lead in the choices that you're making in your lives and the ways that you're reacting to society and the limitations it's put on you. So I can't wait to see the movie. I can't wait to, get into conversations about the movie once it's out. People will be able to see it on HBO Max on June 24th. The world premieres at the Tribeca Film Festival June 17th. Abby Greensfelder, thanks so much for the time.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you guys so much, and I appreciate all that you're doing to talk about, especially women in sports, that you do regularly on your show. So thank you for that.
Of course.